This is the Neurosurgery Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm here in San Antonio, Texas with Dr. Greg Zipfel, MD, PhD. Greg, you've never been on before, have you?
I have not.
Okay, well, so Greg, I'll do a brief intro and then I want to get in your background. Greg is chair at WashU, took over for Ralph Dacey in
2019.
2019, right before COVID. Wow, that must have been fun.
Yeah.
And
Trial by fire.
Extramurally funded, a triple threat. Greg is running one of the biggest empires in neurosurgery in St. Louis. He also serves on so many committee roles. Your specialty is what part of neurosurgery?
Vascular and skull base.
Okay, but open, right? You're not endo?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So, Greg is now going to be the NREF co-chair, and you've had a long history with NREF, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I started out as on the board, and I've served as a research chair and also as secretary, and now moving into the vice chair or co-chair. I'm not sure which one it is, but one of the two to work with you, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, one of the things that's come up just in the past 12 months, of course, is this concept of the problem with extramural funding.
Yeah.
Right, so I guess maybe you could explain what extramural funding really is to the audience?
Yeah. Yeah, so extramural funding just means funding for your research outside of your institution. Intramural funding through your department, through your institution also can play an important role. Those tend to be smaller funding mechanisms to seed funding to get the lab going, get your research program going. Ultimately, you need to get to independent funding through federal agencies like the NIH or the Department of Defense or the NSF. And that's extramural funding for the most part. And it's a challenging time. Federal directives, as of about a year or so ago, have changed the funding mechanisms. It's much more difficult right now. We like to say it's gone from competitive to hyper-competitive.
Yeah.
And
restrictive almost,
yeah,
right?
To some degree. And so I think a couple of things. One is I think we need to diversify our funding mechanisms. It's not all about NIH now. I think you need to find about philanthropy, foundational fundings, and things of that nature to kind of round out your funding for your research program. And then the other one is the trainees, the junior faculty and the residents and fellows, making sure they have a pathway, because the extramural funding or NIH funding goes in cycles, and during a downturn, which is right now clearly a downturn, we don't want to lose a generation of surgeon scientists. And so we're really focused on making sure the pipeline is maintained.
So for context, for folks that don't live in America or they don't pay attention to the news, the current Trump administration, it's a little bit controversial, is probably using this as a wedge issue for universities, right? To force the universities on their attempt to change, whatever you think of this, right? We're not politicians, it's not really for us to say, but what their methodology has been to utilize extramural funding, which largely flows to universities, right? NIH, National Institutes of Health, the Department of Defense, the DoD, and the National Science Foundation, NSF, right? But it's interesting because to me, as an academician, lifelong academician, extramural funding is the coin of the realm of the university, or has been.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you want to advance and be a leader like you are, chair, probably the most important thing you could do is get extramural funding. When you say it's up there, it's really up there, right?
Well, I think it is very important for career purposes. It's also absolutely vital for us to change the field, to innovate, to develop new therapies so we can help our patients much more in the future than we currently are, which is better than what we did in generations past. So so I think it's very important from a career perspective, and it's very important for moving the field forward and helping our patients to a greater degree.
So for the young aspiring clinician scientist, right, everybody coming to us, I should say 90% are doing some kind of research. They understand the mandate in neurosurgery under Harvey Cushing to do research. It's part of your training. And it's intimidating, right? Because you start out, you're like, okay, well, I work in a lab, and you could do the classic PhD postdoc where you work 24/7 in a lab, and then you're under a mentor, and eventually you get known, and then you finally get a little grant, and you get bigger and bigger and bigger. But for the clinician, that's not always so easy, right? To just say, I'm going to go right to the NIH, right?
Right. Well, I think a couple things. I think one is relatively early on, if you want to go the route of an investigator where you're going to be competing for extramural funding, for things of that nature, run your own lab or your own research program with funding to go along with it. There's a pathway, and you need to get trained and mentored. And what I like to call a community of neurosurgeon scientists and get into that community. And it is a fertile, supportive, collaborative group that's really grown in the past 10 years. So getting connected into that space. Yesterday, for example, we had the half-day neurosurgeon scientist symposium bringing all these people together. This one happened to be in the area of clinical trials and had Gavin Dunn and Nada Paradian co-leading this, and understanding that not only do we need neurosurgeons doing science or innovating and doing meaningful, important, rigorous clinical research, we need them leading trials because ultimately that's driving. And so we were trying to fill that gap. So one is, if you're on that path, getting into and surround yourself with people who are doing that. At the same time, we also recognize not everybody's going to be running a lab, not everybody's going to be competing for or wanting to do kind of NIH-funded research. That, what I would call an academic clinician, is vital to the vibrancy of our specialty and for our patients. How do we support that group as well? They're often very busy clinicians, have insights into diseases or technique, and I think partnering with industry and adopting new technologies early so we can improve the approaches we're taking for care is also really, really important. It's kind of a separate topic from extramural funding, but very important.
Well, it's interesting because for the people who are getting into it, right, NREF, the Neurosurgery Research and Education Foundation, which is a sort of a division of the AANS, right, has been very much a part of this exercise, of this philanthropy, of this, of this seeding of young minds and young laboratories and whatnot, right? Tell us a little about what you're doing, the exciting work you're doing with a K-12 program. And what is a K-12 program? Like, what is that all about?
Well, let me start with NREF.
Okay, let's start with NREF.
Let's start with NREF. So NREF, like you said, is a kind of an offshoot, close companion of the AANS. It's really where neurosurgery research and education can be supported and funded in some very meaningful ways. On the research side, NREF plays a really important role in a few different dimensions. One is they have a funding mechanism for medical students. So the medical student summer research fellowships are really important. We give out something like 10 or 15 per year, and really that's an introduction into the space.
How does one apply?
Yeah, so you go online to the NREF website. There's an application every year, and then it's a proposal put together by the student, but also their mentor. So
you need a mentor too to do this.
Yeah, you need a mentor and an institution to do this, and then you apply for it through that, and it's a mechanism. One is there's rigor in terms of that application that is teaching you how to write a grant, how to narrate what you are planning to do, and establish a good relationship with your mentor. So that's getting people in the medical student space excited about doing neurosurgery and doing neurosurgical research. Then as a resident, there are NREF resident fellowship grants, which again are another way to develop their writing skills and narrative skills, also mentored research opportunities, and they give out approximately 5 or 6 of those per year. And then there's also an NREF for young clinical investigators. These are people in their first 3 years as faculty, again, working through the system to write your proposal, show a vision, show your methodology in a way that's convincing to external people, and saying, yes, you are a bona fide scientist or researcher, and we are going to fund you. These mechanisms, the medical student, the resident, and the young clinical investigators, these are all training and foundation building, but they're also benchmarks that NIH and DOD and the NSF and other agencies are looking for, that this person knows what they're doing. They've been well trained, they have a supportive environment around them, and it helps them get to that next larger degree of funding. So NREF plays a really important part. It's interesting, there's several publications looking at the impact of these donations to NREF to these individuals, young clinical investigators, residents, and medical students. And the ROI is very significant, ultimately, in getting them to NIH funding and driving research in the field. So that's NREF.
So NREF provides a vehicle where a young, interested individual can explore, take a little less risk, develop competence, develop interest, and understand, is this for me? But also provide the means to do it, right? Like it's not just easy to just start doing research, right? It's a process. So now take us to K-12, because K-12, this is so exciting, and this is really, I mean, just so the audience knows, Dr. Zipfel doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. In his house, which is University of WashU St. Louis, Zach Wilson-Ray, one of my good friends, is one of the only spine surgeons in neurosurgery that has an NIH grant, an R01, right? He's one of the only ones. There's just a handful of them.
Right.
And that's largely due to him being brilliant, but also your mentorship. So you've mentored many, many young folks in this way, right? I only know about Zach the best. So tell us about K-12.
Yeah. So K-12 is an NIH grant, and it's been in place for 13 years. It's run by a few of us, Ahmad Eskandar, who's the one who originally started the program with NIH funding, Sepihan Johnny, Langston, Holly, and then myself. We run it now, and it's NIH funded, and what it's designed to do is catalyze a junior neurosurgeon scientist career in a couple of ways.
Okay.
So as a first-year faculty member, mostly, occasionally fellows can apply, but mostly junior first-year faculty, they apply in their fall. They come to a retreat. There's a group of established neurosurgeon scientists who interview them, review their application, ultimately get them critiques to help them with their long-term career plans. And 3 to 4 of them per year will get this K-12 grant, which is a 2-year NIH Career Development Award, which can really catalyze their career. The success rate of a K-12 scholar, ultimately getting independent funding from the NIH or the DoD, is about 90%. So a high success rate. So it can really catalyze their own career in lots of ways. So just that alone, it helps their career. The other thing though is, in some ways even more important, is that they get connected in this neurosurgeon scientist community, which involves meetings, formal meetings, in-person meetings at the WNS annual meeting, the CNS annual meeting, and at the K-12 retreat, which is a 2.5-day special, time where NIH folks, neurosurgeon scientists, and then the people who are coming up through the ranks, we all meet. And we share ideas, we share stories, we share how to be successful, we share some failures. And so I think the two parts are the actual funding and kind of the check mark that you can do this, but also getting integrated into that community of neurosurgeon scientists.
Yeah, one of the hard parts about this is you actually managed to put together a sustainability model, right? This is what you've been trying. I mean, we're busy doing surgery and seeing patients, and you're running your labs and all that, but you're also putting together the financial war chest, right? So that in climates of more competitive, as you said, funding situations, that we can still continue to plug along in the mission that Harvey Cushing set out for us.
Yeah, I think there's times where it's even more critical that we have these kind of mechanisms. So, so the K-12 again is a NIH funded component, and it for us allows 3 scholars per year. There's been a program in place for the past, I think about 10 years or so, called the Chris Getch Scholar, which is an additional K-12 scholar. It goes through the same process. It's still K-12. The NIH pays half of the award, but the other half was paid for by the CNS, which was very, very important for this program as it got started. And it's important for 2 ways. One is it gives us a 4th scholarship to give and can help that person's career in very significant ways. But actually probably the most important thing is the way the NIH works is that for the specific K-12 coming from the NIH, you can't be a stay-at-home candidate, which means you can't train at WashU, you can't train at Miami, and then be hired at Miami and hired at WashU. You can't be a stay-at-home faculty member.
Why did they do that?
Yeah, that's controversial.
Okay.
That's controversial. Some people think it's the right thing to do. Others, and I'm one of them,
they're trying to spread the wealth a little bit. Yeah.
Well, some people think that if you're staying at home, you have advantages in terms of getting your lab going that perhaps you aren't in need of these kind of this catalyst. But the bottom line is it's not available to the neurosurgeons at stay-at-home candidates through the traditional K-12 mechanism. But this Chris Ketch CNS NIH Foundation additional K-12 did allow a stay-at-home candidate to apply and to get the award. And it turns out, as we look back, 30% of applicants are stay-at-home people.
Wow.
So without the Chris Getch Award, without this CNS-funded mechanism, 30% of people couldn't even apply, and they wouldn't even go to the retreat, and they wouldn't be part of this process. They wouldn't be part of this community. So it was really transformative in that way. Now, it's getting sunsetted for some financial reasons, and so the NREF and the WNS are trying to mobilize so we can develop an endowment that will create a funding mechanism in perpetuity so we can have this new additional scholar program, which again is very important for an additional scholar per year, but most importantly, we can capture that 30% who are stay-at-home candidates,
Yeah.
so we can get the breadth and depth of expertise and the best and brightest of the junior faculty coming through. So it's really important.
You step in as this money from the Getch Foundation is sunsetted
Right.
Through NREF
Right.
to bridge this gap, more money, more opportunity
Right.
for everybody.
Right.
And shout out also to I was just with Jeff Bruce.
Yeah,
and,
yes.
Obviously Rick Komatar is one of my partners. The softball tournament, hopefully you guys are you going to be there?
Softball tournament?
Are you coming?
I'm
You
coming.
Okay,
I'm coming.
good. So you get to shake the hand of Dr. Zipfel, maybe get some advice, bring your grants with you so you can review, right?
Yeah, right.
But they are putting a heavy support behind this. So shout out to the Columbia folks, Eileen, Jeff Bruce, Rick Komatar, all the teams that play and pay. It's a wonderful thing that is making this happen for people who are in need.
Yeah.
And actually ultimately for our patients.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Yeah.
ultimately what it's for, right?
Yeah, it's a huge contribution that the softball charity event is putting forth, and it's really helping us get to this endowment level that we had, we have identified as a need.
Let's just shout out for the other.
I was going to say that. That's where I was
please.
going.
Okay,
That's where I was going.
Go ahead.
So the softball tournament is a major player. The NREF itself is a major player in funding this. There are certain honor mentor funds that have been converted into supporting this effort. And those include the Warren Selman Fund, the Ed Oldfield Fund, and the Ralph Dacey Fund.
Oh, wow.
So all three two of the three mentors who are still with us have agreed to this.
All great researchers
and then
themselves.
Fund Nation, that's right,
Yeah.
that's right. So they are doing that. And the other one I want to highlight is the Academy. So the Academy, which is very much involved with the science of neurosurgery and drives it in many ways, are also putting their money where their mouth is, where the money where the mouth is, where they are also supporting us at a very high level. So the combination of the Academy, NREF, the softball tournament, and some of these honor mentor funds is we're well on our way to getting to our endowment goal. And once there, we will enter into this agreement with the NIH Foundation so we can do this forevermore.
Now the culture of neurosurgery is so wonky, right? The Academy. I'm a member of the Academy.
Yeah.
I guess one of the few spine members. But the Academy. What's the Academy? Right?
Yeah. So the Academy is a group of neurosurgeons that many of them are investigators, and all of them are leaders in the field. All of them are innovative, and for the most part, very academically productive. Many are chairs of departments.
And it's actually called, what's the full name?
American Academy of Neurological Surgeons.
American Academy of Neurosurgeons. Yeah. Right.
And it's certainly its primary mission, in terms of where it's trying to have a positive impact and help direct our field, is in the area of science.
Okay.
So so it was a natural for the Academy to consider funding this K-12 Scholar Program. I'll just mention one other thing that's related to the K-12 Scholar Program called the Academy Emerging Investigator Program. And this is a program that's really a sister program to the K-12. So what we realized as we did the K-12, there are so many talented individuals, and we only had 3 or 4 grants per year. We saw these other group of people who were really good, but not getting the grant, and how could we help them? And so the Academy stepped in and created this Emerging Investigator Program, which takes somewhere between 8 and 10 additional people into the program per year. The good thing is it provides 2 years of dedicated mentoring, including trips to the K-12 retreat, to the Academy meeting, which is some of the best science you'll ever see in neurosurgery, as well as the meeting at the AANS and the CNS that I previously mentioned. So that's important. The downside is there's no funding. It's a mentoring program, but there's no funding.
That's very important.
But I think the mentoring is the key. And so through that, I think we're having a really large impact. And the other thing I'll just mention is the K-12 started, because of the K-12 led to the Emerging Investigator Program. These programs and the community that has built has led to other career development, mentoring, or funding mechanisms. I'll mention 2. The spine section, I think 2 years ago, led by Zach Ray, who you mentioned before, has a spine Emerging Investigator Program. This is designed to fill this gap. Only handful of spine surgeons have federal funding doing that type of work, like Zach Ray. And the spine section realizes that more is needed because there's so many patients with spine problems that need new therapies. And so they created their own Emerging Investigator Program, which really dovetails well with us. And that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, without K-12 and the Academy program. And then the 4th one is this, what's called the NSTP program. I know it's like acronym hell here, but NSTP, which is the Neurosurgeon Scientist Training Program.
Not MSTP, NSTP.
NSTP, exactly. And that is run by the Society of Neurological Surgeons, and now NREF really is driving it, led by Kostas Hadjipanayas and Linda Liao. And that's another funding mechanism, career development. That one's focused on residents, and you can apply initially just for like a travel budget, so you can get to these meetings and be part of the community. And the second piece is actual funding to help move your forward. And all these things would not have happened without this K-12 and the Emerging Investigator Program.
Well, as promised, Dr. Zipfel does not disappoint. I mean, your wealth of knowledge, you've forgotten more about this whole, this whole process, which is arcane to people that aren't part of it, than I will ever know.
We definitely need to streamline the nomenclature.
It's kind of like government tax codes, right? Like the R's, the N's, the K's, right? Yeah. But we can save that for another podcast, the language of the NIH. Well, Dr. Zipfel, so you heard it here, K-12 through NREF, apply, donate, support, right? It's critical. I mean, one of the reasons people love neurosurgery is because we're doing the cutting edge stuff, the interesting science of the brain and nervous system. So thank you for all of your fantastic work on all these fronts. And we look forward to great success for K-12.
Appreciate being on the podcast, Michael. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep, take care.